the July 2017 General Services Committee meeting to order. At this time, are there any additions, deletions, corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, we'll accept those. At this time, I'll open up the floor for privilege of the floor. Doesn't look like anybody wants to speak, so we will go into the resolution.
First resolution this evening is authorizing an agreement for construction services with Sky Climber Tower Solutions, LLC, for engineering and erection of 12 radio transmission towers.
May I have a motion, please? Mr. Jarrell, Mr. Doldo. Discussion? All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Next, imposing a wireless communication surcharge pursuant to authority of Tax Law 186.
May I have a motion, please? Mr. Navalwanic, Mr. Doldo. Discussion, and I would like to, at this time, to thank Finance and Rules Chairman Mr. Monticelli to let us. We've been working on this project for a long time, the radio project, and while not out of the norm, a little bit out of the norm for it to come here first, it's kind of nice to get everybody's opinion and consensus moving forward. So thank you, Chairman. Appreciate that. And technically it is their realm, but I'd like to open up the floor for discussion. Nobody's going to talk about this. We'd just like to say that this radio project has been a really fun project, and nobody likes to raise taxes, but it seems to be that this comes down to almost a binary decision whether you're going to raise property taxes or you're going to impose this tax. So a lot of we're losing revenue that was banked on with home landline, and the maintenance piece on this project for the towers is significant, and it would be a big bite if you wanted to stay under the tax cap. I don't know if you could. It would be very difficult with the challenges that we face day to day. So I've been a pretty big opponent of it, as most of you know, but the days come where it's time to decide whether we're going to do this and move forward or raise funds. Any further discussion? Legislator Maxson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know that this is a statement or a question. I believe my understanding is that we have a large expense coming down the road soon with the Next Gen 911. It's going to be another unfunded mandate that the state is going to force down our throats. And I hate raising taxes, but it's more of a user fee. These people are using the phone, they call 911, and they don't contribute to keeping up the infrastructure, and the state keeps making us pay. Especially, the price tags I've heard associated with Next Gen 911 are mind-boggling. So I think that planning ahead now with a reasonable fee, tax, cost, whatever the proper phrase is, I think is the smart thing to do, and I think that that's why our ship of state, our budget has been so good compared to some of our neighbors. We plan ahead. It's good to plan ahead.
This is definitely planning ahead, and but these things are a matter of life and death. The infrastructure has to, be in place, but people aren't going to be able to see or touch this, but they're going to need it when it's there. And so, I've railed on the state usurping that $1.20. Basically, they just renamed it and pulled it. We're doing the work. Our dispatchers are doing the work. We're voting on infrastructure to make that happen well into the future. And, we probably stretched that infrastructure as far as we could. So along with your point on the Next Gen, it's where we have to, it's where we're headed at this point. And no one likes to do it, but it's either, in my view, it's either property tax or this user fees. And we certainly don't want to put more pressure on people that have invested in Jefferson County. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks again, Mr. Chairman.
Next resolution, amending the 2017 county budget in relation to recycling and waste management.
May I have a motion, please? Mr. Stoll, Mr. Ferris. Discussion? All in favor, aye? Opposed? Motion carries.
Authorize the implementation and funding in the first instance 100% of the federal aid state Marchicelli program aid eligible costs of the transportation federal aid project, which is the replacement of Coolidge Road on County Route 30 over Indian River. Appropriating funds, therefore, and amending the 2017 county budget and capital plan.
May I have a motion, please? Mr. Jarrell, Mr. Maxon. Discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Accepting donation for the Sheriff's Department K-9 unit and amending the 2017 county budget in relation thereto.
May I have a motion, please? Mr. Ferris, Mr. Doldo. Discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion. One opposed? One no? Huh?
Oh, I got it. Okay.
One. Bill passes. Bill passes. Unsurprisingly, no. So, now, is there anything else to come before the committee? Hey, it was in the news. We had a nice visitor with the Goodyear blimp coming into town. It was good publicity for the airport. Business after hours coming up next month. I think there's a good bit of sponsors, so encourage everybody to go out to that. It's a great way to show off our assets. August 16th, according to legislator dispatcher. She'll be at the ticket counter. So, at the airport. There is a monthly report from Weights and Measures, and we have department heads here. Any questions for them? I'm sure Jimmy's putting down pavement, and Joe's answering phone calls. So we're all good. Legislator Dodo?
Thank you. I was going to comment when we got to that resolution, but that's okay. I just want to say on that Sheriff's Department, that was actually a fundraiser that was done out at North Pole. They raised this money. They split it between the three departments, and it's to be used for the dogs themselves. I just want to make sure that this money doesn't get dropped into general fund if it wasn't used at the end of the year, that's all. But I just wanted to clarify it was a fundraiser. It was all donated monies that came in for their fundraiser that they do annually to help support the dogs' needs.
Very good, Legislator Dodo. Anything else? Any comments, questions? Motion to adjourn. Mr. Jarrell, Mr. Ferris, thank you.
Evening. Welcome to the July Health and Human Services Committee. Is there anybody from the public that would wish to address the committee? Seeing none, is there any changes to the last committee meeting minutes? Also seeing none, we'll go into resolutions.
First resolution this evening is amending 2017 county budget to allocate additional state aid for community services and mental health programs.
Motion, please. Ms. Fitzpatrick, Mr. Drake. Any discussion?
Go ahead.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Now that we've taken care of our second resolution of the evening, we'll do our first resolution of the evening. Authorizing agreement between the Jefferson County Office for the Aging Jefferson County New York Connects, Jefferson County Department of Social Services, Regional Center for Independent Living, and the Northern Regional Center for Independent Living.
Motion, please. Mr. Doldo, second. Mr. Doctor. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Next is authorizing agreement for provision of mental hygiene services.
Motion, please. Mr. Ferris, second. Mr. Maxon, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Accepting funding for New York State Department of Health COLA for lead poisoning prevention and rabies expense, and amending the 2017 county budget in relation thereto.
Motion, please. Mr. Drake, second. Mrs. Fitzpatrick. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Accepting funding for the New York State Department of Health COLA for immunization action plan, and amending the 2017 county budget in relation thereto.
Mr. Doctor, second. Mr. Ferris. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Next is authorizing agreement with Cognizant for electronic billing of commercial insurance claims.
Motion, please. Mrs. Fitzpatrick, second. Mr. Doctor. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Accepting funding for the New York State Health Building Healthy Communities Conference Scholarships, and amending the 2017 county budget in relation thereto.
Motion, please. Mr. Drake, second. Mr. Doctor. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So we've run our course of resolutions. There's some monthly departmental reports there. We also have Ginger Hall here. And Mrs. Barnhart. What? Oh, yes, my apologies. Anything else to come before the committee? Motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Oh, it was Mr. Ferris and Mr. Maxon. Sorry.
Who was hearing? I'd like to call to order the July meeting of the County Standing Committee on Finance and Rules. This time, is there anyone who would care for privilege of the floor? Seeing no one coming to a microphone, could we deal with the minutes? Any changes, deletions, additions to the minutes? Last month's meeting? Hearing none, we'll move on to a special presentation from our auditor, Drescher and Malecki, Luke Malecki and Nicole. I'm sure I should be able to hear you, but I can't. So, Nicole.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Nicole Ruff was the senior manager. Ruff. My name is. I think you know. My name is Luke Malecki. I was the engagement partner on the audit of the Jefferson County financial statements. A lot of the information today is going to kind of be consistent with the information that's been presented by the Treasurer's Office related to the annual update document filed in April 30th, or around April 30th, with the New York State Controller's Office. We had no substantial adjusting journal entries nor did the county, but what our firm does is we're hired as independent external auditors to provide a third-party verification to the financial statements to indicate that whether or not they can be relied upon by end users of the product, which would be federal, state government agencies, bondholders, and the residents of the county. What we do is we perform a series of tests surrounding the account balances and internal controls within the county. We do not do an audit of internal controls. We do expose ourselves to certain internal controls as they relate to the financial statements. And any items that might come to our attention will be brought to the attention of the board if we felt that it's to be a significant deficiency. We'll talk briefly on one significant deficiency that's consistent with prior years towards the end of the presentation. Other than that, there's really no new items as it relates to a significant deficiency or material weakness, and there were no federal award findings. Part of a requirement of a government your size that gets substantial federal aid is to have a single audit conducted, which is under uniform guidance. We perform a series of tests around certain federal programs and found no items that would classify as a federal award finding. Within our financial statement package, you'll receive 4 items. One is the financial statements. We anticipate those to be released in about 2 weeks from now. We're still waiting. One attorney letter and then one final piece of documentation from the Treasurer's Office, which she hasn't received yet because we can't give that to her until we get the final letter. So we're kind of in a waiting game, but we do anticipate in the next couple of weeks we can get these financial statements out. You'll get the actual financial statement booklet, then 2 letters, one being the Auditor Communications letter and one being the Management letter. Auditor Communications letter basically goes into detail some significant assumptions, changes in accounting policies, and the roles of the auditor versus management. We communicated all those significant policies and estimates with the audit committee earlier tonight, and the letter formalizes that communication. It's actually addressed to the audit committee but copied on the full legislature. We also do a small report with the New York State Department of Transportation that is required because you receive certain level of CHIPS and Marchicelli aid. There was no findings with that report as well. And then shifting to the next bullet there is just going over some financial statement highlights. As I said, this is pretty consistent with what's been communicated to you by the Treasurer's Office earlier in the year, but what we do is, again, provide that third-party kind of take on it. When you're looking at the expenditures of Jefferson County, we see that there's a total of $176 million of expenditures. This item is very consistent with last year. It actually increased to only 0.5%, so an increase of less than 1% from the year into 2015 shows the hard work of the county legislature and management in making sure that that budget is reasonable. And within that $866,000 change, less than 1%, was actually a $1.8 million increase in the sales tax distribution within general government support. You can see the second line actually upticked a little bit. And also increasing within there was an increase of about $400,000 in employee benefits related to health insurance and those sort of things. So those two increases equaling over $2 million were actually offset by various decreases throughout the county. One of the decreases is a top line, the biggest cost driver in the county, which is the economic assistance and opportunity. Jefferson, like all the counties in New York State, gets the benefits of carrying out a lot of these federal programs. So a lot of that gets thrown through that economic assistance and opportunity. Some of that, substantial part of that is matched with federal and state aid, but the administration costs and the cost of running those programs is within that amount. So seeing a nice stable line and the highest cost driver in the county has definitely proved to be beneficial when you look at the appropriation side of your spending. Additionally, last year we saw, in the year end of 2016, we saw public safety decrease by about $1 million. That had a lot to do with the reduction in costs related to the outboarding and some software that was required in 2015 that didn't replicate itself in 2016. And across the board in each of these cost drivers, there is the kind of lingering effects of decline in the retirement bills, the amount that's payable to the employees' retirement system and police and fire retirement system, which is an amount that's dictated through the New York State Office of the State Controller. Shifting to the revenue side had a favorable year as far as an increase in revenue. It should be no surprise to the people in this room that the biggest two revenue drivers were an increase in non-property taxes of about $4.2 million and real property taxes of about $3.3 million. Additionally, an item that's really not spoken too much on is on the bottom line there, although it's the lowest revenue stream, 2016 saw an influx of a one-time revenue from tobacco settlement revenue. Years ago, related to a master settlement agreement, the counties throughout the country actually got awarded settlement money from the tobacco manufacturers, and typically it's an annual stream of about $1.5 million for your county. In 2016, there was a subsequent settlement that was a one-time release of revenues of about $1.3 million. I can emphasize the fact that it's a one-time, and next year, in 2017, we actually expect, and I think that money's actually been received by now, to go down to about $1.7 million again. So it was a one-time revenue to help assist with the fund balance during 2016. This shows the trends of your revenues and transfers in and expenditures and transfers out over the last 5 years. This most current fiscal year, the revenues for the first time in quite some time actually outpaced expenditures by $5.6 million. To kind of put that in perspective, the cumulative decrease that we're looking up there from 2012 to 2015, because that red line was over the blue line for so many years, was $14.65 million. So really, the $5.6 million in 2016 did do a favorable impact to fund balance, but it didn't come close to filling in the hole that was kind of drilled through the past 4 years. And I think that red line was actually higher than the blue line for 2011 and 2010 too. That's not on the 5-year trend here. As I said in the earlier slides, the main driver in that increase in fund balance was the heightened revenue stream, and of course being able to maintain a level of expenditures from 2016 to 2015 in an era where we're faced with all sorts of mandates, and whether it be by the labor agreements, health insurance, or within the federal and state requirements. So this is a chart that we started to show a lot to your county. What it does is it puts a ratio on your revenues and transfers in and expenditures to transfers out. For those of you not familiar with the ratio, it's a simple, just revenues divided by expenses. Really, the goal of everyone in this room is to get this long-term average to be as close to 1 as possible. That would mean that our revenues are equal in our expenses. If you look at the long-term 5-year average for your county, it's at 0.9904, which sounds like a pretty good number, a pretty good average. But what it really indicates is that in the last 5 years, if you were to smooth out all the activity and look at a 5-year period, you're looking at a 1.8 million or so decrease every year, is what that 0.99 versus a 1.0 increase is. So it would equate to almost $7 million over the last 5 years that would actually go into further support the fact that I said years 2012 to 2015 had almost a $15 million decrease, and this year we had a $6 million increase. The net effect of the last 5 years is a use of fund balance of about $7 to $9 million. Without had 2016 not been such a favorable year where we were last year, that number was at about the 4-year average of the 2012 to 2015 was at 0.98. So that actually is a $3.6 million dip to fund balance. So that 5.5, what I'm trying to explain is that it's smoothed out over the last 5 years, and it actually brings you guys more in line with getting to that ratio of 1, but there's still a little bit more work to do to get up to that, to a 5-year floating average of 1. This final slide, when we talk about the finance, is what we look at is with your compliance and your fund balance policy. As a reminder, your fund balance policy requires or it strives to keep an unrestricted fund balance of total expenditures and transfers out, excluding the distribution to the local municipalities for sales tax, of 2 months, so that's 16.7%. The fund balance goes on to say that should you fall 10% below that policy, there should be action taken to get within that policy. So that would be, the low end of the range would be, 6.7%. And on the flip side, if fund balance were to get to 10% above that 2-month range, which would be 26.7%, there would you require a plan to get within the policy. So your window of range is 6.7 to 26.7. And as a matter of comparison to what kind of the industry standards are, the GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association, actually recommends to keep 2 months fund balance on hand for a county of your size. Really, the simple logic behind it is to help float the cash flows from when the tax revenues start coming in. But again, what the purpose of this policy is to show at the end of this year, although your fund balance will show about $30.7 million, 15.3 of that is reserved for certain things, prepaid expenses, which is considered a non-spendable. There still exists a long-term loan between the general fund and the solid waste fund. There's certain legal restrictions surrounding some insurance money and other purposes. And then, of course, there's $7.2 million that was allocated to be used in 2017. So once we take all that $15.3 million out, we're left with about $15.5 of what we would consider unrestricted or available fund balance. A portion of that is assigned for specific uses, but in the case of an emergency, they would be available to the county. So of that 30.7, to reiterate, 15.5 is available for use, and that's the number that goes into this percentage of 10.2%. As you can see, it was the first time since 2013 that you were actually within the range, and currently you're at the low end of that range. As I said earlier, you'll get a management letter with some minor housekeeping items. We discussed all those items with the treasurers and then the affected departments, and we also explained them with the audit committee. Those will be formalized in written communications to this board and the full legislature. I mentioned the significant deficiencies surrounding solid waste. Although there was a little bit of improvement last year, there was about $1.6 million that was owed to the general fund. At the end of this year, it was closer to 1.2. So there was a pay down of loans of about $400,000 from the solid waste to the general fund. However, the $1 million, the long-term written agreement hasn't really been touched, as was kind of revisited by the county in December and restructuring the loan payment to be $50,000 a year instead of $100,000, but it continues to fail to operate independently and relies on that loan to pay back. Although last year was a positive cash flow year, which allowed for a slight pay down of that loan. I can take any questions now, as my contact information is up there, as is Nicole, the senior manager. Certainly, we can be available if anyone has any questions at a later date over the phone, or I'd be happy to address anything now.
Have we any questions? Legislator Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This isn't the first presentation I've seen you do over the years. I guess just as practical question, I guess. As far as, we have multiple department heads, and you go through and do an audit. Do you spot check departments that you review, or is it more of a, bird's eye view of the books and how you
it's
do your approach?
a little bit of a hybrid. It depends on the level of transactions that are going through the departments. Social services, we're required to work closely with a single audit. When there's cash moving within the department, we look at those. But our requirement is to gain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are without material misstatement. So that requirement in and of itself kind of indicates it's more of a bird's eye view as far as the department level. But I'm not going to say that we don't go into departments and see the level of controls. What we do is we do perform a detailed test on expenditures and payroll and journal entries. So should a department get selected in one of those samples, we'll be exposed to them, but there's no formalized cycle to test each and every department within the county. That would be more of the role of the county auditor or an internal audit function.
Okay, thank you. I just asked that because, the solid waste management tends to be one that comes up every single year.
Well, that
so
one is
I presume it's because of it's an identified deficiency, and I presume that you come back to re-examine that year after year.
Yes and no. The solid waste is unique because it has its own column in the financial statements. So what we would refer to it in my world as its own opinion unit. So we're required to gain a little extra knowledge on that opinion unit so we can form an opinion of that. So that's why that one gets a little bit more exposure. Since there's a significant deficiency, it gets even heightened exposure. Similar, and the other opinion units would be shown on your governmental funds, which is the general fund, and there's also a column that has the non-major funds. That's where your DPWs and your road machineries would fall into those categories. So that's why solid waste gets a little bit more, because it's its own special little column.
Further questions? Mr. Malecki, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Nice presentation. What comes to mind as I hear your presentation is I'm a former public school teacher. When I would get a phone call from a parent when we'd have a good outcome with a student, get a good grade on a state test, and they'd call and say, "Oh, thank you very much." And I would say, I appreciate your zeal, but I'm not interested in your thanks because I'm not willing to take the blame when things go bad.
True. And you also probably instructed to keep an eye on those grades for the years to come.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Well, we're on to Finance and Rules Committee sponsored resolutions. First resolution.
Authorizing the vacating of judgment of foreclosure for owners of certain parcels of real property and discontinuance of foreclosure proceedings.
May I have a motion, please? Legislator McBride, Legislator Nabawanek. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Next is amending Resolution 113 of 1965 to increase taxes on sales and use of tangible personal property and certain services on occupancy of hotel rooms and on amusement charges pursuant to Article 29 of the tax laws of the state of New York.
May I have a motion, please? Legislator Fitzpatrick. Legislator Johnson. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Other than the way it's worded? No. Okay. Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Next is authorizing agreement for one-stop operator.
A motion, please. Legislator McBride. Legislator Nabawanek. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. General Services sponsored resolution.
First one this evening is imposing the wireless communication surcharge pursuant to the authority of Tax Law 186.
May I have a motion, please? Legislator Johnson. Legislator Nabawanek. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Amending the 2017 county budget in relation to recycling and waste management.
Motion, please. Legislator Drake, Legislator McBride. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Opposed? Carried.
Marchicelli program. Authorizing the implementation and funding of the first instance 100% of the federal aid and state Marchicelli program aid eligible costs of a transportation federal aid project. Appropriating funds, therefore, and amending the 2017 county budget and capital plan.
Thank you for reading that. Motion, please. Legislator Drake, Legislator Doctor. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Accepting donation for Sheriff's Department K-9 unit and amending the 2017 county budget in relation thereto.
Motion, please. Legislator Nabalonic, Legislator McBride. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. On to Health and Human Services Committee-sponsored resolutions.
Amending the 2017 county budget to allocate additional state aid for community services mental health program.
Motion, please. Legislator Doctor, Legislator Drake. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Accepting funding from the New York State Department of Health COLA for lead poisoning prevention and rabies expense, and amending 2017 county budget in relation thereto.
Motion, please. Legislator Nabalonic, Legislator Doctor. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Accepting funding from the New York State Department of Health COLA for immunization action plan, and amending the 2017 county budget in relation thereto.
Motion, please. Legislator McBride, Legislator Johnson. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Accepting funding from the New York State Health Building Healthy Communities Conference scholarship, and amending the 2017 county budget in relation thereto.
Motion, please. Legislator Nabalonic, Legislator Fitzpatrick. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Informational items. Revenue expenditure spreadsheet and the monthly department reports from the county clerk and health benefits report. Anything else to come before the committee? Hearing none, I guess I'd take a motion to adjourn. Legislator Nabalonic, Legislator McBride, all in favor? We are adjourned.